Good afternoon and Sunday afternoon, 5 o'clock. Welcome once again to the Week in Review on ilovemelville.live. If you want to ever come back to us on that, I hope you're already signed in and listening. And today we've got some serious things to talk about. The first one, of course, that we've advertised, we're talking about farm murders, farm attacks. My panel is Dr. Piet Krokup of Northwest University. And also joining us soon will be Jan Joubert, independent journalist, political journalist. And we're talking to Dr. Theo de Jager, internationally known in the field of agriculture. He's been in the past been part of Agri SA, now part of SAI, the leader of SAI, also a national agricultural organization, representative organization. And Theo, welcome. Welcome, Theo.
Theo's been muted.
It seems that Theo's been muted.
There he goes.
There we go. Right. Theo, you can hear us now.
Thank you, Cobus. Thank you also for inviting me.
Theo, let's start with this thing, and a controversial subject in many ways. It seems that people are more or less sometimes split down racial lines often and other political lines when it comes to the whole issue of farm murders, farm attacks. But we seem to have had an escalation in recent weeks. Is that your idea of what you've seen?
Yes, we have seen an escalation. Also, in terms of how widely spread this thing has become. For the first time in years, we've had farm murders, along with the gruesome torture that goes with it, in parts of the Northern Cape, where it was something strange before. There's been quite a number in the Western Cape, especially around Paarl. And of course, we have the usual suspects, the northern areas of Pretoria and Mildersdrift, that has also seen a large number of farm attacks.
And it seems to me we've got a problem with Theo's signal there. But Theo, if you're back, give us an indication. But in the meantime, let's carry on. Piet, you've been involved in agriculture. You're somebody also who's got your finger on the pulse of many of those events. What has been your view in recent times? Your experience?
I think we have to actually reframe this whole discussion on crime in agricultural areas or in rural areas. And that is, I think, as long as we refer to it as farm attacks and farm murders, it's almost as if we militarize the concept and we arguing or assuming some other way that it is a very specific phenomenon separate from the rest of South Africa. I'm not 100% convinced that it will stand us in good stead if we look in that way at farm murders. I think as an underlying philosophy, it is of critical importance that we get the buy-in of all South Africans into what is happening on farms. And as long as we isolate ourselves, I think it's always going to be difficult. It's almost as if there's a sort of a privileged position that we mark out for ourselves. We are a special group of people, and any form of crime against us deserves a special parlance, a special nomenclature, a special description. And the fact is, and I think there's enough evidence for it now, is that it's not possible to prevent or to stop the crimes on farms if we don't do something about crime in South Africa in general. And there's enough evidence that the crime on farms is a spillover from crimes in urban areas in South Africa. There's a small percentage, and I think Rudolf Zinn has researched this well, there's a small percentage of politically motivated crime on farms. I don't doubt that. I think the figure that they attached to it is something like 6%, but the phenomenon is much bigger than that. And I think for me is in the solution. How do we solve the problem? And I can't for a moment think that unless we isolate farmers in the rural areas and we build a big wall, Trump-like wall around farms, and we give a special form of military protection for them, that you can isolate them from the rest of South Africa. I think we have to, and I think it must come from the side of agriculture, to rethink the whole concept completely, the words that we use. As long as we use farm murders and we use farm attacks, we militarize the concept, and I think we set ourselves up for a political target at least. We make it impossible for the president or good people within the ANC or within government to directly associate with us. I think we have to repackage ourselves. I think it's a bit of a PR exercise, but we have to start there.
Has Theo rejoined us, Theo? We haven't traced Theo yet again. Jan Hubert, you've joined us. Welcome. And you've heard what Piet said now. Your feelings from a political side, if you've got your ear on the ground at Parliament and other places as well, is that idea that Piet's now proposed to seek closer bonds, if one could call it that, to stand together against crime in general, and that would include these gruesome attacks. Because I think we should also make the point that it's very clear when you read crime reports that places like Alexandra and so on also have, it's not only on farms that you have this harsh brutality when people are attacked and robbed and murdered. It's a wide phenomenon, and maybe that's where the solution lies also, that people have buy-in across the board, as Piet said, to stand together against crime.
Well, I would have thought so, yes. Where I agree with Piet is that much of this crime is a spillover from a general crime situation, and that one must be very, very careful not to put some sort of position of privilege where you only care about farm attacks because farmers are involved. There's also a sometimes thinly veiled situation of racial referencing in this from both sides. Now, I think to solve it, I would propose two things, and the first is being done by the Democratic Alliance at the moment. It has to be deracialized. Now, in the last month or so, the DA has started focusing on these farm attacks, and they have made one difference that no one else has made. They have taken this fight, they've taken up this fight in every language and by every sort of hue of skin color. And that has already helped in deracializing it. As far as their imperative for doing so is concerned, it might well be, as is alleged, that they are just trying to get votes in the process. The last time I checked in politics, that was no crime. Now, the second point I want to raise in this regard is the solution which Piet spoke about and clearly did so to some degree in jest. But I would say the exact opposite of erecting a wall would be a good idea. What I have never understood, and I've put this to Diane Kohler-Barnard, who is driving this DA campaign, but I see absolutely no sign of resonance, that actually if I were a farmer and I was worried about attacks, I would agree with the basic point of departure that these rural attacks are so grisly because of the isolation of the people involved. So then, to my mind, address the isolation. Why do the farmers not have the workers, who they always claim to have such a wonderful relationship with, move closer to the homesteads? That to me would be step number one, but thus far that has not come up in the general conversation on farm attacks. And I would love to hear from Dr. De Jager, when from wherever in the sticks he's communicating with us with, what he thinks about that solution.
Theo, is jy met ons? Are you with us? Theo De Jager?
Yes, can you hear me?
It seems to me we're still losing that
Oh,
fight. I'm
Theo.
sure
There he
Mornay.
is.
Theo, we've traced you. But I think, Jan, you might just have to shortly repeat your question for
My
Theo.
first
Okay, sure.
question.
You heard the
So
question.
Dr. De Jager,
Okay, Theo.
here's my point. It is widely held that the problem with these farm murders and the grisly nature thereof is the isolation of the homesteads where they take place. I've never understood why, in such a case, the farmer does not simply move the farm workers closer to the homestead. Why is that not done?
Because not all farms are the same. It's not possible on all farms. On many farms, it is a solution. Like on my farm, my best security is probably the fact that I have my workers so close to my home. But on many farms, the workers' housing are spread across the farm so that they can be closer to the points where they overnight the livestock or where they have the pumps, so that there can be some kind of security on the rest of the farm too. Remember, although we are now talking about farm attacks and farm murders, the issue of theft on farms, whether it is the theft of livestock, of game, of copper, of diesel, of harvests, it is terrible. It is really impacting on our competitiveness on the global markets because it becomes part of your overheads. And not always is it possible to have everybody living in the same yard on a farm.
Theo, if I may ask you something, I heard you talking on RSG this week, and you said something that I found curious. And I found it curious because a few years ago, I was involved in a project where we did a little bit of research, and we mapped the nature of crime in places like Alexandra, for instance. And in those areas, the crime was horrendous and atrocious. You couldn't believe what is being done to people. The shacks will be standing right next to each other, and people will invade a particular shack. They will rape the people, burn them with water. They will force the children to rape their mothers, to rape their sisters, the father to rape the children. They will do all sorts of horrendous things with them. And if you broaden that to the community and the experience of crime of people in informal settlements, it is absolutely abdominable. You can't believe what you hear. And then what I find curious is when farmers say, or people that represent farmers say, but this is a very specific type of crime. The torture is very specific to farmers. And it's absolutely not true. It creates the impression that we try to make ourselves into a very special group of people. We are targeted people. And crime-wise, there's no evidence for that. Politically, if I can believe Robert Zinn, there is very little evidence for it. Don't you think we harm our cause if we keep on making ourselves a very special case? Isn't it time that all South Africans who are victims of crimes in some other way identify with the situation of farmers?
Yeah, Pete, I wish it could be as simple as that. But I haven't heard, and maybe it's because I'm far away on a farm, but I haven't heard any political party coming up at its mass meetings singing, we need to kill people in Alexandra. We need to kill the gangsters. Like we've heard, kill the farmer, kill the boer. No one is calling in public for those kind of crimes. It's only on farmers. And then after these horrible incidents, you do not see 10,000s of tweets or Facebook postings saying, great, we need more of these killings. Let's do it again, like we have seen on farms. And then there's nothing that happens against people who are calling for that. I mean, how difficult can it be to find those Twitterati that is actually blowing on that fire?
Yeah, but that's a separate issue. I think one can address.
Sorry, I also want to come in here.
Yes.
Jan?
Sorry, can I come in here?
Yes.
Really, Dr. De Jager. Many people would fall for that little trick, but that doesn't work. Everybody knows that these people can be traced, and for instance, the DA is tracing them. So, if quite frankly that is the solution, then you're not doing your job. If you want to lay charges against people, the law is clear. So honestly, that was a good little maneuver, but it's not going to work on this program.
No,
Jan
Theo,
Jan,
I'm less angry than Jan. I just want to ask you something. That's difficult to do. I just want to ask you something. That's a separate issue. I understand that. I understand the concerns around that. But let's just stick to the initial argument that the crimes on farms is very specific in nature, because that's not true. And I think if we do that, if we say that, we isolate ourselves, uh, and we're a privileged and a separate group of people. And I think we will not solve crime unless we get South Africans to buy into it. And we must make it easier for political. Even the DA, I think, had taken a long time before they were prepared to publicly really start a campaign in support of farmers. Why? Because that type of argument place us in an ideological position where it is very, very hard to come up in support of us. Don't we think we should get a different strategy instead of claiming facts, which I think you wrongly claimed? It's not true that the farm murders are more gruesome than other murders. Instead of doing things like that, by making ourselves these victims of a very special attack, shouldn't we think a little bit more laterally about things and redefine ourselves and see if we can have a different strategy which is more successful? We need the buy-in of a lot of people in South Africa, political parties, black South Africans, black farmers. We need the buy-in of other people in this thing. But the way we package it, it's going to be very hard for other people to support us, other groupings, isn't it? Or don't you think so?
yeah, I
Do you?
agree with you. We need as much support as we can. And I think we are gaining more and more of it, because farmer tax does not have a color to it, and it does not have a class to it. It is not true that farmers are attacked only because they are wealthy, because the poor ones are attacked and murdered too. It is not true that it is only white farmers. Only in the last few weeks, we saw some of the most gruesome attacks. The woman farmer who's the pregnant one whose throat was slit in KZN was an Indian farmer. But what I do not agree with is that this is just the same. It's just an extension of normal crime. Because although I hear Jan Jan, and Jan Jan can be as excited as he wants, I have not heard political parties asking for other murders. And I would love Jan Jan to point it out to me. And I have not seen all these tweets fueling it on afterwards, as he claims. And I will be the first to say, sorry, Jan Jan, I was wrong. If he can show it to me. Only today we have seen thousands of that kind of reaction because of the protests of yesterday.
Jan?
Sorry, easy does it. Okay, easy does it. Really, Dr. De Jager. Challenges are better when they're a bit tougher. 3 people were charged this week with inciting farm murders by Diane Kohler-Barnard. My point is not, and do not frame my argument within your frame of reference, that other murders are also being incited by people. That may or may not be the case. But surely, as someone who represents a farmers' organization, your focus should be, and that was your first claim, that these incitement of murders take place against farmers, and therefore it's somehow special. What I am saying is, every avenue is open for you to charge those people. To wait for a political party to do so, quite possibly in order to gain political capital, reflects poorly on you. And quite frankly, this sort of strange, special, I don't know, I am a victim mentality is unnecessary. You have every means at your disposal to put a stop to that, and I should suggest you do so promptly.
Now,
have you charged anybody?
The organization who left it to the politicians to pursue those. I'm not sure which one you are talking about. Most certainly, us and SAI have never tried to pass on the ball to any political organization, and I hope you do not suggest that that it is us who are waiting for the politicians. What we have done is we have tried to see which of those are not bots. We are actively trying to identify some of these people, and we know that it would not help very much. But for what it's worth, we will take those names to the Human Rights Commission, even if it is just to show that there is a discrepancy in the way the Human Rights Commissions are dealing with with the kind of cases they bring before them, because it is especially those people on social media who is making this thing a racial one, which it is not. It has never been. And then, you know, it's also about the nexus between the land issue and the farm attacks. Just see how many of the reactions are linking the farm attacks to the land issue.
Okay, but what about
we-
a completely different strategy? I accept the fact of your strategy seems to be a reactive one, and I'm not completely agree with the idea that you can start chasing people on Twitter that make these pronouncements and stuff. I think what I'm trying to get to you is that can't we rethink the whole concept, even the words that we use? Rethink the idea, see if we can get our PR work a little bit differently, and see if we can get it easier for other groupings to identify with us. By the way, I was hardly disappointed when you joined SAIP, or when you because you attach it to a particular ideology on the side of AfriForum and Solidarity, and it's almost as if you made the concept, you politicized it even further. And I was hoping that, especially with a guy like you that I think is particularly bright, you know, in this industry, that you would rethink the idea and say, well, maybe we should de-ideologize this thing, depoliticize the thing, and start a phenomenon where people, that political parties and other people can identify with. And if the EFF say kill the Boer, then a whole lot of people say, no, that's nonsense, you can't say that. Now it's only you saying that instead of a whole lot of people, because so few people can identify with the strategy, I think, that farmers take in defense of themselves. I honestly think, I'm heartbroken what happened on farms. As much as I'm heartbroken what happens in Alexandra and other places, but I think the strategy that you employ is counterproductive. It doesn't work, and it is very, very hard for political parties to come to your defense and to defend you, and it's even difficult for police and for bureaucratic structures. One has to rethink the strategy that we employ to defend farmers.
Can I come in here, Kobus? I have no problem with what. Sorry, with any organization Dr. De Jager might belong to. My point was simply made that when he was asked earlier in this program what the difference was between a farm murder and another murder, he made the point that farm murders are incited and that nobody was doing anything about it. My only point is that, quite frankly, in that case, maybe he should start doing something about it. That's my only point.
Dear De Jager, I think we've scratched the surface maybe, but this is a topic that we need a broader discussion on, and I hope that we'll be able to interest you in such a discussion quite soon. But we are coming to the end of this discussion. A last word from you, perhaps, on, can we expect some sort of combined effort soon from people to get to the solution of these attacks?
Well, our strategy, the one which Peter has alluded to, stand on three legs around farm attacks. And the first is, of course, to try to prevent it. For that, we have around 225 farm watchers in our network. And we are not a part of AfriForum, as he said, and we are not a part of Solidarity, just as we are not a part of the Institute for Race Relations, with whom we have probably one of the closest networking relations, or the F.W. de Klerk Foundation, or the Helen Suzman Foundation, with whom we also have networking relations. The second part is to conscientize people around it and to create an awareness, both locally and internationally. And I think that the one on awareness is really bringing us a harvest at this stage. As you have seen yesterday with all these protests all across the country, and the discussion in Parliament, which we have also seen today. And along with that, the number of articles that appeared in foreign media, simply probably because the English-speaking media has also now picked up on this theme.
Theo De Jager, thank you very much. We'll have to call a halt there. That was Dr. Theo De Jager of the agricultural organization SAI. And as you heard there, I think a topic that still justifies a lot of discussion and a lot of thought, to get to a solution on that. We're going to take a minute's break, and when we come back, we're talking to John Moody on his recent decision to leave the DA, as he was leader in the Gauteng area, and on his way to other pastures. We'll have to see where he's going. Okay. Welcome back, and you're listening or watching the week in review, and we've just had a very good discussion with Dr. Theo de Jager and on farm attacks. But the next person, also in the news this past week, John Moody, who decided that he's leaving the DA, and well, let's hear from him, and because we don't know where he's going. He hasn't said or announced anything yet, as far as we know. John Moody, good afternoon, and welcome.
His mic is off.
Your mic, the microphone on John Moody's off. If we can just unmute him there. John Moody in a nice area, nice water in the background. Looks like the Waldheim, maybe. Mornay, our producer, if we could just check John Moody's microphone. Well, I think let's go on with this discussion while we wait. John, hold on for us. We'll see what we can sort out. Mornay will be in contact with you as soon as possible. But in the meantime, Piet and Jan, both of you have been watching these political parties for quite a few years and things happening around them. John Moody? No, can't get him yet. But there's some sort of an attempt going on there to get that mic unmuted, but I think Jan's muted now as well. So in the meantime, let's see whether Jan's, it's very difficult to mute Jan at the best of times. So let's see whether we can carry on with this discussion in the meantime, because Jan, there seems to be a lot of, at the point where the DA really needs to be, or one would think that they should be a united force. The ANC's got trouble. They're fighting among each other, according to reports. But so is the DA. At the moment, we thought that they would be putting together and making a mark.
Yes, one would have thought so, but that's always the problem with a collective. A collective is made up of its parts, and there are tensions in the Democratic Alliance, and one of them played out this week when Mr. Moody, you seem to be moving into the Free State, if that's the Vaal Dam out behind you.
It is the Vaal
Dam.
We've got him.
Yes. I'm the bit of R&R, yeah, with my family, yeah.
Mr. Moody, let's look at your decision from our side, because it seemed at one stage you were challenging for leadership in the DA, or it was reported that you'd be challenging, and then this week you up and announced you're going. Why?
That is good. Well, I made it very clear in my media event and statement. The minute I had put my hat in the ring, things started heating up internally. And as has happened in the past, whenever I'd contested for, especially the provincial leadership, there would be attacks on my character to bring me, to bring my bona fides as such into question. And I've just seen how things has escalated over the past few months in that regard. And I realized that in the past I had been able to weather the storms and to be, quite frankly, to come out successfully. because I believed in the leadership and the integrity of the leadership. I believed in the integrity of the processes, the legal processes within the party. And this time around, to be honest with you, sitting at that federal executive, being part of the decision-making at the highest decision-making body, I then realized that this is no longer the political home that or party that can feel politically at home in, because there was definitely an attempt at there was definitely an attack on my personality, and that I was going to be facing disciplinary charges with regard to my coming to defense of Musi Maimane. But there's a whole lot of other issues also, and you see it playing out now with other provincial leaders as well, being more prepared now to come out and express their dismay and their discomfort with the matter in which the federal legal processes in the party are being used, in a sense, to try and discipline or to purge the party. In fact, I've been told that just in this week, members of the federal executive were informed that if you cannot defend the party, in other words, and defend its position, that they should take their bags and leave. Now, I mean, if you're talking about the democratic organization, if people want to express either their solidarity in my leaving and the reasons for my leaving, they should be able to express such. One of our it becomes laughable eventually at the end of the day. One of our provincial leaders is being charged merely for inviting Musi Maimane, who had requested an invitation to a legislature's opening, and the charge is for bringing the party into disrepute and to causing disharmony within the party. So, and then there was even a call for him to be suspended, pending the outcome of the disciplinary hearing. And the person has to look at this very in depth and say, what's happening here and where's this party going to? But at the end of the day, I have made my statement. It is clear, it's out there. The party has rebutted. They have come forth with allegations, which, and many can say I've run away from it. That's an opinion, because I haven't seen any charge sheets. In fact, what I have witnessed is the total abuse of the processes of natural justice. And again, a person sees it again unfolding where people such as Mzila van Dam, only hearing about disciplinary action against her in the media. So that is where we are. And I think what we also need to understand is the background to all of this is the fact that if after the successful comeback of Helen Zille, you had an individual, and I'm not going to mention names here, who indicated now we have our party back, or more or less in those terms, we're going to fix it. We're going to fix our party, as if the party had gone awry and gone wrong. Now, and then of course another detractor indicating that he's going to take me to court, and I really love that because I know it will be an impartial hearing. The rules of natural justice will prevail, and I will have what a person calls an impartial hearing with regard to the alleged charges that he wishes to bring against me. I'll wait for that day in court, but they must remember that it's a two-edged sword here. I also have my rights, and I will defend myself. But here's the rub of it. When that individual says, I have a problem with him allegedly because of the fact that he's a classical liberal and I am a racial nationalist. So, and then there's a denial in the party that there is definitely tensions within the party. And I was listening to your program earlier on about farm attacks and how it can be construed as only being white farmers. I have my in-laws who are sheep farmers in the Northern Cape, and they come under attack, and they're not white. So it's about farm murders, and if a person starts to racialize things, that is when we have a problem. And we're living in a South Africa that is becoming more and more tense as we have people vying for job opportunities and resources that, in terms of economic resources, that are becoming scarcer and scarcer as our economy, degenerates. And it's about livelihoods at the end of the day, and we're humans. So people playing up racial tensions, quite frankly, is not something that should be allowed, or not even just to be frowned upon. We need to move on.
Jan Joubert?
Yes.
You have a question on this?
Yes.
Let me maybe while Jan thinks about his question, let me just ask John. John, hello, nice to see you again. I just want to ask you something. It seems like the only name that you are prepared to mention in this is that of Helen Zille, and I think there's a lot of South Africans that will agree with you that whether she's guilty of something or not, but Helen Zille seems to be problematic within the DA. Do you think that if she has never come back to the DA, it would have been a different party? Do you think there's a material difference to the party that include Helen Zille from the one that exclude her?
I'm sorry, I missed that because I got an incoming call. Could you just repeat that question to me, please?
The only name that you seem to mention is that of Helen Zille. So I think there's a lot of people that will agree with you that Helen Zille do change the nature of the DA in some other way. But do you think if she never came back into the party, it would have been a very different DA that we have today than the one that include her now? If she remained retired, do you think the DA would have had fewer problems?
You know, when Helen became the leader of the party, she really promoted diversity and allowed people of color to feel at home within the Democratic Alliance. In fact, under her leadership, we were able to attract people of color of caliber. And I need to express and explain what I mean by that. Instead of having to go and headhunt and go and talk to people, of prominence and so on, opinion makers to join the Democratic Alliance, people felt very comfortable to freely come and join the DA because they saw the DA as an alternative. They saw a DA that was inclusive. They saw a DA that was fighting for all South Africans. And everybody wants to be associated with an organization that truly represents all the interests of all South Africans. Personally, when Helen was pushed out of her position, I was one of those who stood by and said to her, "Why are you doing this?" In fact, I cried because we at least expected her to be pushed out of the party, because that is exactly what happened. Because a week prior to that, we had a federal executive, and we were, in a sense, assured of the fact that Helen would still be our leader, moving through the Congress. And the next thing is, a few days later, an emergency FedEx, and she then announces to the media that she's stepping down as leader and not availing herself. Ironically, allegedly, it's the same people who had pushed out that has brought her back into the party. And she's come back with a different vengeance from where I stand. In terms of her tweets and things, and I said to myself, I don't understand where this comes from. But you know what? I think when the person has to look with hindsight, I think that she was as leaders previously, she was truly about building an inclusive South Africa and an inclusive Democratic Alliance. For some reason, I think things went wrong with her and Musi on the tweet on colonialism. I think that is where it was, and so this thing about I need to come back and I need to fix up what is wrong, and she was charged, and having listened to her and FedEx, that bitterness still remains there. So nobody spoke up for me. Nobody when I was going to be brought to a disciplinary, nobody spoke up for me. Why are you speaking up for other leaders who are now facing disciplinaries? So it's almost as if I'm going to get even with you type of attitude that she's come into the DA with. I don't agree with her tweets. You may say she's free to tweet what she wants to, but if you're a leader of a party, you're a prominent politician, you were a very successful premier, you grew the DA under your leadership, you promoted Musi Maimane in every way that you could to afford him the opportunity to lead the party. And when he is pushed and he leaves, to come back with such a vengeance, and also these unnecessary tweets and getting involved in racial issues such as Black Lives Matter, and choosing a side on a matter that is very controversial and yet very emotive at the same time, and not seeing what damage it causes or the potential damage it can cause to already racially charged South Africa. I'm sorry. I had my fallouts with her. I expressed my opinion about her and her tweets personally in meetings, and I did so out there in the media because I felt that a different voice within the DA has to be heard. Because ultimately, the circles that I move in, and the people that I meet, and when I say circles and people that I meet, I'm not talking about the most affluent of people, not at all. I'm on grassroots most of the time. And people ask me the question, so this is the DA that you belong to, and these are the things that your federal chairperson is saying. Do you subscribe to that? Of course I don't. And if I have to say that I don't subscribe to it, there's a possibility of me being charged for bringing the party into disrepute and causing disharmony within the party. I became very uncomfortable and unable to defend utterances by a leader that seems to be untouchable. So, I had to move on.
John Moody, where to now? You said you're moving on. Where are you moving on to? Have you decided yet?
As I've said, as you can see, I'm here at the Valdam. I'm out on some R&R with my family. There's a lot of offers that have come my way, a lot of opportunities. But I will tell you one thing, and that is I will never give up on my South Africa and my people, all my people. And I say my people because I'm South African. And my family and my makeup is to John Moody, who I am, is in a sense from all race groups in South Africa. And I believe that the DA doesn't believe that something like race does exist. There's only the human race. But anyway, that's a different argument. I don't want to get involved in that. I will consider what is best for my family and what is best for my country.
That was John Moody from, ex-DA. And as you heard, they're not sure yet in which direction he's going to be moving from now. But before we sign off from this week in review, we need to have a quick look at the DA conference. John made an allusion to it now about the declared policy of the DA, and they came out with a statement saying non-racialism. Jan?
They have. I think one must look at what that conference is and what it isn't. They're going to have a press briefing tomorrow, and I can fully look into my
Crystal ball.
That it.
So Jan, ek was reg gewees, hoor.
Say what?
Nee, ek was regtig met denke. Jy moet
But things are so hazy, John. Things are so hazy. Well, look into that crystal ball, and I will say the following. That there's going to be a lot of John and I, we've walked a long road, haven't we?
We have, yes.
Yeah. So but that's a story for another day. I think that that there's going to be a lot of focus on what it isn't. And one must remember what the DA set out to do here was firstly to look at its principles. That was yesterday. And today to look at two aspects of policy, namely the economic and the local government sphere. So I fully expect that tomorrow many people are going to say, where is the housing policy? Where is the sports policy? Where is all sorts of other policy? That's not what it is. Let us engage with whatever they come up with. What I understand to have happened yesterday is that the first issue was about non-racialism, and that was, to quote one of the delegates whom I spoke to quite wrongly, I'm a bad boy when it comes to these things. I don't trust the political party to give me the whole picture, so I speak to people, and then there's lots of trouble. But apparently it was a bit of a bloodbath. And after that, there was a discussion on reconciliation, which went somewhat better. So what we must look at is the nexus between race, wealth, and poverty, and how the DA wants to address that. And that, I think, must be our focus tomorrow, because much as they will want to focus on the facts that they agree with, I think a party should always be held to those aspects which are contentious. And let's see how they go. Tomorrow, it's time for them to answer, and you can be sure that we will ask them to the best of our ability to hold them to account.
That was Jan Joubert and our other panel member today, Piet Krokamp. My name is Kobus Bester. We'll be back with This Week in Review next Sunday at 5 o'clock. And, well, if you keep your eyes open, we might just come up with a surprise package during this week still to have a look at what happens or what has happened at the DA conference. But I'm not making any promises, but keep your eyes open. We might just get there. Have a very good week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kobus. Bye-bye.
Thank you.